Hi, everybody. Welcome to the fourth installment of the Accredited Gemologists Association Gemological Career Forum. AGA membership represents so many different facets of the gem and jewelry world, but what binds us all together is our passion for gems and gemology. Since 1974, AGA has been providing gemologists with continuing education through conferences, newsletters, virtual presentations. We try to hold 2 conferences every year, one in Tucson and one in Las Vegas. And we are really excited today to announce that in the next few days, we're going to be opening registration for our Tucson 2023 conference, which will be held on Wednesday, February 1st at the Tucson Marriott University Hotel. This full-day conference will feature 6 gemological presentations and 3 hands-on sessions. And for the first time, we will be live streaming the gemological sessions to our virtual audience. Registration, like I said, will be opening in the next few days. Please visit our website and watch for emails regarding registration. AGA is a nonprofit organization. We depend on the generosity of volunteer hours of our board members and our committee members, and we depend largely on the support of our sponsors. I'd like to send a special thank you to Art Samuels and EstateBuyers.com, who has been AGA's diamond sponsor for the past 7 years. This year, we are very happy to have and appreciate the sponsorship of Heritage Auctions, the Gem Shopping Network, Magilabs, Stoller Settings, the American Society of Appraisers, the Canadian Gemological Association, and the Scottish Gemological Association, who all serve as AGA Emerald sponsors. Please do consider these great businesses and organizations for your professional needs. As we all know, the field of gemology is diverse. A gemological credential opens the door to a whole new world of opportunities. Our goal with this series of forums is to provide you with the opportunity to explore what you might be able to do with your gemological credential. So today we're going to be talking to a fantastic group of talented gemologists who see and study gems and jewelry through a camera lens. Like all of our webinar presentations, this forum is being recorded. Please visit our digital library to view our past forums and webinars, and watch This is AGA to learn more about the Accredited Gemologists Association. Kate will be posting the link in the chat box. I'd like to offer kudos to Dr. Cheatham Lulay, who continues to imagine new ways for AGA to serve the gemological community. Cheatham is an AGA Bonanno Award recipient, as well as AGA Conference Committee co-chair and board member. Please welcome Dr. Cheatham Lulay.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about this session as well, because I love sharing information, and I am particularly excited about the subject, and I am happy that I have 3 panelists here that I admire their work, and I always respect their generosity to share the information and their time. So thank you on behalf of AGA membership and all the others that are joining today. Before we start, I'd like to welcome all the attendees. We have quite large numbers today, and I'm sure it will be watched even more later on. You have a little control panel on the screen. At this point, you are muted and your cameras are off. But because this is a panel and we are going to open the discussion platform to discussion for all the attendees, be aware that you can type your question at any time into the question box. And also, Kate Donovan, our marketing executive, is going to be posting all sorts of information on the chat box. So make sure that you follow those information too. So Kate and I will be basically mending what's going on behind the scenes while I'm talking to our panelists. But as I said, I'm going to open the platform. We're going to talk about a few things with my first questions, but we have hour and a half of time that you can ask your questions. So questions are highly, highly encouraged. So please either type your question or raise your hand. If you see that button there, then we can enable your microphone. You can talk to the microphone as well. With that, I'm not going to carry on too much, and I would like to introduce Orasa Weldon, Jeff Mason, and Danny Sanchez joining us for photography and gemology together. And I'd like to welcome them and also ask them about themselves. I'm sure you have all read their bios and you know them anyway. You've seen their work in places maybe you haven't even paid attention to their names, but their works are all over the place and very well known. So I'm going to ask them to talk about themselves a little. So we can take it from there and ask other questions. So Orasa, would you like to tell us about yourself and why you do this? Thank you.
I love art, and anything combined with art, that's, when I cook, I look at it as artwork. I don't like the dishes, but the cooking is creative. So when I began photography, of course, everybody knows my husband, Robert Weldon, who's been around for a really long time with his skill. And many of the pieces that I still looking at it in my office, mostly cat's eye stuff, phenomenal stuff. I still can't pull it off. I'm looking at it every single day and say, I'm gonna get there one day. I'm gonna get there one day. To me, gemology helped save my life, because when I began the school in Thailand, I was 17 and a half to 18 years old, and I was in a lot of trouble. In a big city in Bangkok, a teenage girl. So it kept me busy day and night for, I think, I don't know, forever. And so when I graduated, then I said, okay, now I have to find a job. Keep me busy. So that's how my life started. And of course, brought me to America, and here I am today. That's my life. I'm still going, still going.
Yeah, you found your passion quite at an early age. That's great.
Yeah, I am. I'm still going. Every day I woke up and I said, oops, something new today. I need to be creative. If I don't get creative, I feel my brain just go blank, So many times I have clients who want certain things, and certain things is boring. But you can't tell your client it's boring. Just say, you give them this the way they want it, and then you do one and say, oh, look at this. You don't have to, if you like it, you can pay. If you don't like it, that's okay. It was just, I just have to get it out. And then they usually like it. Yeah.
Thank you. How about you, Danny?
Wow, that was great. Well, I actually feel very similarly to Orasa, and I came to gemology and photomicrography, kind of late-ish in like what people consider a career. I'm self-taught. I was a musician in my earlier iteration of my life, and I got pretty burnt out with that lifestyle and was looking for something. What do I like? What do I want to do? I'm a very creative type, and like Orasa, I do need to be actively creating things at all times, or else I'm just sad. Life is dim, when I'm not creating. Anyway, and I discovered that, or I rediscovered how much gems grabbed my attention. And so I heard that you could study gems. I went to the GIA to study gemology, got my GG, fell in love with the the photographs of photomicrography, and started putting a point and shoot up to the oculars, this style, just right up to the oculars to see what I could do. And then I just kept digging deeper, trying to find a better way to, one, take a picture, but two, to capture the feeling I get when I look at photomicrographs. It's more of chasing a feeling than it is a technique, and I can speak more to that later. But yeah, that's me. That's it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Oddly enough, there is a need to create. It's the same thing. I've been playing with gemstones since I was a child, but I found that as I was chasing a career in the jewelry industry, every time I'd go home, it's like I would try to create something. I would carve things, I would paint, and around the early 2000s, I started doing photography as the hobby after work. And after 10 years of a hobby, it became a career. But it was that need to create that actually sparked a desire to capture something. I've been around these gems my entire life, and sometimes when you sell the piece, and I was like, man, I wish I had a picture of that piece after I sold it. Or it's like the regret sometimes you sell the piece that you wish you would have held on to. And now I can take pictures, and it's eternal. And then I can sell the piece and not have to worry about it, because sometimes you just want to look at the image more than I wanted to actually hold the piece.
Oh. I can see the pattern here. I mean, I understand that all the people I know who are successful are passionate about what they do, and that's coming out even the way that you express about your feelings about what you do in photography and so on. But also I can see quite a bit of persistence in what you're doing. You stuck with it, you carried on doing it, you wanted to do better, you wanted to achieve what you saw that was great. So something really triggered you to reach to that level, which is fascinating to me. So I hope that message is given to the audience as much as I could. It's not only I'm hearing it, I can feel it as you speak, three of you. That's wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to ask another question to all of you again, and then this time, basically, it's going to combine what we spoke so far. Whatever you call this, your profession, your business, your passion, that combining photography and gemology together, that's what we are talking about here now. How did you use these two to become what you are today? How did they come together? You started off, some of you started off with photography and went to gemology and so on, but now what makes you today is all of them together. So can you talk about that a little more, about how you actually bring that all together, not just as a business, but also how they support each other? Can we start with you, Danny?
Sure. How do they come together today? Well, in the beginning, when I first was attempting to take pictures through the microscope, my gemology, it's not, obviously my gemology just funneled me right into this because I love pictures of the insides of gems. And I wanted to, I guess emulate is a good word. I wanted to emulate what I was seeing in the textbooks and what I was seeing on the internet, which at the time was very minimal, but inclusions in gems. And so that's what I was doing. I was trying to take pictures of the inclusions in gems. And I sort of make that very distinct because the more I shot, the more I realized that I was less interested in the inclusions themselves than the character of the gem. And I think that the way I view quote, my gemology is really the feeling that a gemstone brings to me when I'm holding it, when I'm looking at it, whether it's in person or in a photo. And with my photos, I really try to convey a feeling rather than a inclusion. And my passion just for making, my passion for creating something from nothing-ish, really just drives me to keep taking another photo and another photo. And that, there's a whole arc of technique and, teaching myself photography and microscopy. And, but really, the through line is my desire to make something that makes me happy, right? My desire to make something that satisfies that thing inside of me rather than something that I'm reaching for on the outside, something, somebody else's work I'm trying to mimic, or, it's just the thing inside me. So it seems so cheesy, but it's the thing inside me that I want to get out. And the thing inside the gem that I'm trying to get out. Yeah. And I do want to say, just before we keep going, I've had the pleasure of walking a show with Jeff last year in Tucson. And I've had the pleasure of being in Orasa's home and experience her cooking, and they're both just great company, great people. I don't want that to go unsaid.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I lost the sound a little bit, but I think I'm back now. Sorry about that. Now, Jeff, can I ask you the same question? Would you like to add something to that, or your point of view to the same combo?
Of course. In what I do, I feel like the gemology is very important to the photograph. The first thing that I have to do is be able to take a technically accurate photo of something before there's any art involved, before there's any creative, or before there's any emotion. So if you don't understand the gemology behind what makes a cat's eye, then you're never going to capture the photo to portray the emotion. So there's a large amount of technical skill that you need to understand, and sometimes the difference between color change gems or it's a doubly refractive gem. So there's the technical gemology that you need to understand, and there's a foundation of that. And then you can play a little jazz, and then you can try to pull out the emotion of something. As when you look at a gem, it's like there's plenty of gems. It was like I look at something and it's like, ooh, I see this red flash, or it's like I see an emotion. It's like there's something that when you look at something, it calls to you. And that's what I try to capture for the end product. But how to get there is wrapped in one part technical knowledge, and then the other part is creativity. And so some of that is, if something's highly doubly refractive, the photo could look like garbage. I photographed a single crystal rhodochrosite that was faceted not too long ago. The birefringence is crazy. The photo it didn't even look like a real thing. So I put on a polarizing filter to reduce the doubling, and then it looked like a real gem again. Because sometimes it just doesn't portray. It doesn't look right when the doubling is what looks like on a screen a half an inch off, and you're like, it just doesn't translate in your mind to be able to get to where you can draw the emotion in. So I think that pretty much sums up the question. It's like the pairing of gemology and photography. You have technical knowledge, and then you have the creativity. And when you mix the nerdery from both together, then you can create something that hopefully in the end product makes somebody just look at it, feel that same emotion you felt when you took the photograph. And then you have something that in my job, it's like, now they want to buy it from a picture. And then I did my job well if that happens.
Okay. Thank you. How about you, Orasa?
I think gemology helped me. One of the projects that I did, this obvious one, I mean, it helped me every day, but the obvious ones that GIA hired me as an independent contractor. They are having this project called the imposter, the one that one red stone, another one tried to be something else, one of those. And so I went to GIA Museum and I started looking through their 50,000 collections, find out this, green sapphire look just like this green something else, like green garnet, something like that. And I photographed side by side in order to they use it for one of their website or Instagram, things like that. So many times when you see Instagram on GIA, sometimes you see my name on there because I did those projects. It helps so much because I have to pair them as close as possible. So when they're trying to figure it out, which is because they have some kind of a test going on, who can get it right. So that was depend on me to figure it out. And I had a lot of fun. It was like 2-3 months project. And then I'm beginning to learn how to photograph certain things. Let's say, for example, I need to photograph a crystal that you can't see reflection on the surface. Because if I see reflection on the surface, I can't see the inclusion inside, because I like the inclusion to come out. My clients said, no. I said, yeah. I give you one with conclusion because it's just so beautiful. I give you one the way you want it, okay? So I have one that, because if it's a reflection, one of those, you can't see it. So I try those, and as a gemologist, sometimes I actually have to go through the book and look at it again. It did help a lot. I can't explain it, but you have to have that skill. You have to have that knowledge, especially opals. You don't want to photograph inside water for too long. It will really crack. So those kind of thing. And I have to admit that without gemology, I would not be comfortable with photography as I am today.
Thank you. It also reminds me with your answers that there's actually a lot of diversity in what you do. Danny goes for inclusions and Jeff goes for both gemstones and jewelry. And then Orasa, you have many different things going on because you're working with scientific groups, you do in graphic design and so on. And then I believe you've done some field work as well. So now I'm going to ask you individual questions. So if you want to chime in, if you have anything to do about the question that I'm going to ask the person, if the others feel that they would like to talk about it too, please feel free. We would love to see you chatting as well. But I'd like to ask Orasa about the diversity of her work and why do you think it's going that way? And also, you're very modest about your work. You don't talk about it much, but you have awards that you won. You have seriously important gemological publications covers that actually pictured your photographs. So let's talk about your work and tell us, because we have 3 images here that you wanted to talk about. And tell us why those pictures are important to you, and what are these bringing you in terms of diversity into your work?
I like this one because I want to make sure that people out there don't ignore volunteer work, because this is volunteer work. And because of this project, it took me 2 months, but I have to do early in the morning, about 5, because I start my photography 9 to 5. That's how I pretend to be working from home, pretend I'm at work. So then at night and weekend, in order to do this volunteer. And because I work with so many professionals, the writer and then the editors, and especially the editor, Mr. Stuart Overland, he had been in G&G for 25 or more years, lost experience, and he taught me so much. So when you get to learn something and just to do a project like this, and you learn like a lifetime, I have 2 books right now. And without this project, I was not going to be able to do this, what I'm doing right now. It's just such important. That's why you have to get up super early, go to late, sleep at night late, don't watch too much TV, don't watch too much of anything, and just focus on volunteer work. That to me, and I'm waiting for the next ones coming up in January. Can't wait.
Do you have anything to say about volunteer work, Jeff?
That's it.
Any,
Oh, sorry.
because we all do.
Yeah, I know.
Volunteer work in gemology, so I guess I'm sure you will have something to say about it.
Yeah.
She's talking about working late, and last night I worked until 10 p.m. Like, it's sometimes the big projects come in that just need that much effort.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't. I mean, you know, there's as far as volunteer work, in the gemological, like as far as my photos and volunteer work, I certainly with photos I've taken, I feel as though I'm pretty generous when people ask these days when people ask for usage of my work. I'm pretty generous. But that's with photos I've already taken. You know, if I'm asked these days, if I'm asked to do work, like, you know, produce new photos, the answer is pretty much, you know, on a volunteer basis, pretty much no. You know, I do have a day job, and that is it supports all of this. And so I'm lucky in that regard, because this is not an inexpensive hobby of mine. Yeah, I do watch TV.
I will disagree with your refusal of volunteer work, because you're here, you're volunteering your time. I see you talking and teaching what you're doing. You're sharing your info. That's volunteer work to me too.
You're right. Yeah.
If you kept everything to yourself, and if you said, no, I'll charge for my time for talking or teaching you this, then no, I wouldn't consider that volunteer, but you do. So let's just not undermine our time, whether it's late at night or during a trade show for a talk. Yeah. And,
You're totally
big
right.
projects,
Yeah.
as Jeff said, you know, you can quote only so much for a job, but in order to make it perfect, you're actually spending a lot more time. Again, it is to me volunteer work too. So it's the perfection that you're looking for in your work, and that what puts you aside from, you know, anybody else that doing similar thing. So Orasa, let's move on to the other slide and talk about talk about the other one. I really want to show you ask you about the diversity of your work and the field work, and this is to me very, very exciting. So tell us about this one.
Well, I have this project, GIA hired me to put together this booklet, but I'm the art director and the designer, all the other stuff, and also help with a lot of photography that inside the book. All the other stuff is GIA and Robert and Donna and all the other people. And the reason I put this as one of the things I like to show is that sometimes I go to life and I look back and I go, I went and spent 2 months on this project, that project. I get paid, money come, money spent. What do I have left? Sorry. Put it away. So, but this project, what we call gift that keep giving. That's what I say, right? So every time I heard about it, every time, because this project somehow maybe start a lot of life. People have money to buy things. People buy shoes for their children. People be able to fix their houses and all of stuff. Brought me so much joy. And 2019, my daughter and Robert went to Africa to do this project together. She went with him.
tell us about the project first, a little. Just
Okay.
some of us know about it, but maybe in the audience I didn't know about it. But it is an important thing to explain what the project is in a few words, please.
It's what do I say? It's about teaching people in Africa, mostly women, to identify the rough. The good rough, this is not so good, this is better. And if you photograph, if you put in water, it cleaner, it look better. And if this is the white tray, if you put a flashlight under it, you can tell the color and all those stuff. This is mostly just a gemology thing, but very basic.
So
and
basically, the purpose of the project was to teach the small-scale miners, who happen to be mostly women, to teach what they are mining instead of relying on other people. So they could actually mine what it is and then define what they have.
and
serves them
be
a
able
lot.
to get better prices.
Right.
As
So that
confident
better
in
knowledge, they can sell better. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And explanation for me is difficult, but design the book to make it as basic as possible, but still understand. And then it's in Swahili. So sometimes I have to flip the book upside down because I can't read, therefore why bother? And then to make sure that I actually figured out how to design this book. But otherwise, it's a very good project that I wish I can get to do at least once a year, because it just keep making me happy. Sometimes I woke up in the morning and I go, what am I going to do today? But when something like this happens, it extends your purpose, extends your creativity, there's a reason why you do what you do, you know? So Robert said he might go to Kenya next year, bring this book. I'm like, wow, make me happy.
That's
So
great.
that's all I can explain. I don't know how else to explain it.
Okay. Let's talk about the next picture, because that's basically followed up with this, right? And so tell me about this one.
This one is a poster. It's like 4 feet by, I forgot how big it was. It was at the GIA Symposium 2018, I think. It was a big poster, and they call it poster session. This poster accompany the booklet. The booklet, one in English, one in Swahili, one in English and Swahili, and then all the gem stuff, and then poster to go with explanation and all those stuff. And the reason I like it, because it goes to show that this is what you do to give back, or did you do to help other people who, there's a reason why. For example, on the left, on the bottom next to GIA sign, see the mirror? When you reflect the mirror and the light together, you can see the stone color better. Sometimes when you don't have flashlight, you just a hand mirror going out in the sun, and you reflect the sun in the mirror, you can see the stone and the inclusion. And on the left side, with the under the man with the hole in the stone, the stone in water and stone without water, you can tell the colors better, things like that. So I mean, that's, and then the quality of the rough on the bottom too.
I have the book, and what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the photography actually speaks the language and explains what's going on here. And I love the way that you combine all your talents. It's not just photography, not just gemology, but also your graphic design and the eye to see all of that coming together and serving to such a great purpose. So that's what takes your passion to a level that helps other people, which is fascinating to me. And thank you for doing that. Do you have anything to add to this, Jeff, Danny?
I mean, that's amazing work to empower the people at the source is was wonderful.
Okay. All right, well then I'll move on to Jeff. I'm going to ask you your question, and if the other panelists would like to join in, then they can talk about that after your answer. But I'd like to ask you, because we talked about it before, and I find it really interesting. When you first started, because gems and jewelry are very expensive and not easy to get hold of, how did you start getting products to photograph when you first started off? You know, people might be actually having questions about that. As a gemology student, for example, even to test gemstones was difficult for me. I couldn't get hold of many gemstones all at the same time. So for a photographer, how did you do that?
The very first things that I started with was my collection, which is a very small collection, but you can't photograph them more than once because you already know how to do it. I would ask friends that created, and then I would literally go to Target and I would buy silver jewelry and I would take photos of it and then I would return it. Like, just to get the repetition, just to get the 10,000 hours in. It was like, there's no school to teach you how to photograph jewelry and gemstones. A lot of it is done through trial and error and putting in your 10,000 hours. And it's like in the beginning, when you're not good, I was like, when I was a beginner, I was not good. It took me probably 7 years of playing with it as a hobby before I was good enough for people to want to send me things so I can get the more repetition, the more reps in. And because of that, it was like, you could get creative. It's like wherever you can find it. So that could literally be something as Target, Walmart, buy it, shoot it, return it, just so you can get the reps in so that you can get your 10,000 hours of work in if you don't have any other access.
Sounds great. Very creative too. The solution is creative too. Danny?
Yeah, well, similarly, I started with my own collection, and I remember going to gem shows, walking gem shows, way before I even had a microscope to shoot through, and looking for stones with inclusions that I was one day, like I'm gonna shoot this one day, but you know, you're priced out. If you're just, you know, just little old me walking through a gem show, you see some cool mineral or, you know, cut gem with an inclusion for, I don't know, even just like, yeah, $60 even. This is like the promise of a photograph isn't real, right? It could be nothing in there. And so the path of least resistance was to just like dig through, you know, quartz points, broken points, you know, just whatever the cheapest stuff is, I would just buy it. And that is definitely where opals came in. I mean, you know, for those who know me know that like opals are my thing, and in particular Mexican opals are my thing. And I would just go through the $3 cab trays and buy as many as, you know, my budget allowed for that year or that month or whatever it was. And get, you know, just get as much time in the scope with them as possible. As Jeff says, you just time, just repetition of the practice itself. Because in this regard, every stone is going to be wildly different, and have its own requests of you. And yeah, for me, it was truly just digging through things that were $1 a gram, or, you know, a couple bucks per stone. That's where I live.
Thanks.
And I will add on really quickly. You know, then you build relationships, and then, you know, maybe if I'm lucky, somebody, you know, lends me something special to photograph. And yeah, you know, but relationships are also quite important.
Right.
For sure.
Orasa, do you want to add anything? Because you touched on that with volunteer work before. Did you use other methods to obtain materials to photograph?
Oh yes, one or two, I think a couple good example. One, my friend Meg Berry, everybody knows, she's a, she's a Spectrum Award winner. She wants a lot of images for her website. And I was working on some other project, mostly designing poster and things like that. So I said to her, why don't you give me all the gemstone you have for me to photograph? And maybe do some exchange, but you have to be very honest. If I don't do a good job, you have to tell me off. And she did tell me off so badly. And I, of course, appreciate her. So I, sometimes I photograph this piece and then I send to her, she said, oh, you need to make this way, make that way. You need the carving, have to show, but not this, not that. Okay, redo it again, so I did that. And at the very end, she's happy. Now that she's happy, that means I made it. She told me, she said, you came a long way. There's some room for improvement. So yeah, I did that for, and then she, at the end of the project, she gave me some beautiful stone for it. I was like, okay.
That's
and
great.
yeah, so I learned those. And then when I was at, so that I called friends like Rebecca Vine and some other designer, and I said, look, why don't you give me something to photograph? For, if you liked it, you can have it. And they said, yeah, okay. So they give me something to photograph. I photographed it and they like it. And they said, what do you like for this? I said, well, how about pair of earrings? They said, okay, you can have the earrings, things like that. But yeah, and that's how
great.
I got a lot of earrings out of that. And by the way, I like to tell Mr. Jeff that one day Robert find your pictures one day. He said, oh, Rosa, you have to see this guy. Dude, picture are phenomenal, And I go, uh-oh, I better go check it out. And then Mr. Sanchez too, Robert came back from, was it Gem A? That you were in Gem A? Yeah. He said, oh, this young boy. I said, I don't think he's a boy. Because everybody's going, because he said, his slideshow with the music, just like you feel like you were in a painting. And then you woke up, you go, oh, it's still going, and it's just like an art. And I go, wow, really? I missed that, So yeah, you both are very admired. Robert, love you guys. Just let you know.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing here is not just the repetition, obviously perseverance we talked about at the beginning, not just the repetition, but good contacts, supporting each.
Oh yeah.
And networking in our business is very important. Whichever level you are, it's a great testament again to that point. So that's great. Okay. Now, Danny, here's my question for you. How does your gemology directly link to the item you are photographing?
Yes. Well, as Jeff spoke to a bit, gemologically, I mean, doubling is a great example, especially with photomicrography. If you have doubling at that magnification, your photo's lost entirely, because imagine, yes, a single crystal roto in a set in a ring photographed as a product is one thing, but if you're trying to look inside the stone and the whole thing is shifted doubled an inch or whatever to the right, it's a silly photograph. But my gemology, like I said in the beginning, I really wanted to take those photos of inclusions and associations, and I really wanted to fit into the community, maybe, let's say, in documenting inclusions in gemstones. And gemologically, let's say, that was important to me. And yes, so then it became, something shifted one day, and I realized I really wasn't going after the inclusions themselves. So the photographs that made me the most happy were the photographs where I was photographing an environment rather than, you know, putting something down the center of the frame and, you know, trying to capture it. Really, what was happening on the edges of the frame and the movement of the eye and those kind of things. That's where that shifted into. But gemologically, you know, you have to know how light is going to behave when it hits a facet. You know, knowing the refractive index of a stone, knowing how, yeah, I mean, it's if you have a faceted stone, if you have a cabochon stone, either way, at that magnification, light is chaos once it enters that stone. And so little things along the way, whether it's diffusing light or reflecting light or polarizing light, adding a first order red compensator to the light path, like these things, knowing how the stone will behave and how light will behave once it, or as it travels to the stone and once it travels out of the stone is very important. Yeah.
Great.
That's why all this stuff is back here.
Do you want to talk about that?
These are lights. I mean, you know, everything, almost everything here, with the exception of the camera, and then which is kind of hidden back here, which is the mast. This is it moves the whole unit on a z-axis. Everything else is like eBay and Craigslist. It's all secondhand stuff. I mean, these light guides, the light source, even these monitors. You know, it's a very expensive pursuit, and I try to minimize that expense everywhere I can. I am in the estate business on the jewelry side, so I have an estate kind of mind. I think of things, you know, like to be buying secondhand, buying things secondhand. But yeah, I mean, I have opals everywhere. You can't quite see because of the frame, but this is, yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. But I think what I would want people to take home is that it's cost prohibitive, to be sure, you know, as a whole, it really is. But yeah, with patience and an eye, yeah, and an eye towards these secondhand markets, the barrier of entry is minimized.
That's the reason I asked the question, actually, because we've all talked about how you started off taking so many photographs, and it looks like a very expensive hobby from outside. You know, you're not photographer. You're not just going out to nature and photographing trees and birds or anything like that. You're photographing something really expensive and not so easy to get hold of. Yet you had your own creative ways to find those items to photograph. And same applies to your equipment. It is not a cheap thing to obtain, yet you can accumulate these things in time. So this is another message that we want to give out to people, especially who are interested in photography, gemstones and so on. It is not the most expensive thing if you find the right ways to do and learn from other people who's done it before, like you have explained. So one of the purposes of this forum is that, and I'm really grateful that you're all explaining how to achieve those things, both for the methodology and for the materials that you are working with. So that's great. Is there anything else you would like to add, Jeff or Orasa, to this?
I have a side note. Oh, go ahead, Orasa.
No, it's okay. Let me think about it. You go first.
If anybody has questions about lighting, like they can reach out to me personally, because there's a lot of things that we can buy on Amazon or off of eBay that makes continuous lighting, very inexpensive. And it's just like what Danny said, and it's like there's ways that when you start, you have to make things affordable. Like, because what I have for gear is very cost prohibitive. And you can buy a car with what I have in photography, lights, and gear. And you can't do that to start. But there are a lot of ways to work around and a lot of ways to understand what we do with very inexpensive gear. And it helps people to learn and to start. So that if anybody has questions, they can reach out to me personally, and I can help gear them in a direction.
Thank you. That's a good point to remind you all that on the chat box has been sharing all sorts of links and the information that you can reach out to our panelists. So if you haven't noticed that so far, please have a look at it, because you can reach out to our panelists through that information and many other information there. So pay attention to that chat box. Orasa, would you like to say?
Well, many of my photography lighting are from the kitchen. I just don't combine it. For example, I have to photograph this piece, and the light need to be small dot and coming to from the back, because otherwise it will be too much. So I went and get one of those strainer when you use it for the flower, put it in front of the lighting, and the light break it into a little hole and go in the back of my gemstone. And you can see the light coming through, and then the inclusion start to light up. That's how I'm going to do it, right? But when you have a light, you have the bundle, and then it's only going this way or that way, but it does not go into individually inclusion. And I think I have the picture of that is in my Instagram. So, and then, but this metal strain with a little hole in it, it did the perfect job. So that's one of them. And then I use baking sheet every now and then, and I hold the baking sheet. I put two of them together and I make into a round, like a tube, a little tube. And then I use it to block the light from here and there and go straight to especially when you photograph something round stone is difficult, especially flat, round agate. Whatever you do, the light was just gonna make it, block and pat of white everywhere. That's what I do. So whenever, before I throw something, I'm gonna say, that would be perfect for that project, So and it's free. That's throw them anyway.
So creativity comes in many different ways, right? Okay, great. Now we have more than half hour, and I have tons of questions listed here. So I'm going to start one by one, and this is the time again to invite everybody asking questions so that I can read them with your name, without your name, or let us know. Just join us and ask questions. Now I'm going to start, and these questions, unless they are in the question, is going to be for everybody. And the very first one comes from Robert Weldon. He's asking, is it about the camera or the technology and software, or is it about the eye? How do you develop the eye? Who wants to go first?
I don't know.
Bobby, bringing it. I'll start. I get a lot of emails, a lot of DMs, what camera do you use? What microscope do you use? How do we, definitely I'm asked, what equipment. But, as we've been talking about, it almost can't matter in the beginning unless you have unlimited funds, right? That answer, that question, it's like you do your best with what you have, and you try to take the best shot with the equipment that you have. And best shot is, of course, subjective. And so that sort of speaks to the eye part of his question. I think I heard how do you, what was the part of that question? How do you teach the eye, or
How do you develop the eye?
how do you develop the eye?
Have the camera or the technology and software, or the eye?
I think the eye is, I mean, you know, if you, to perform at a level, they have to be concurrent in a way, but the eye is harder, I think, and certainly to look for inspiration outside of your field, listen to music, look at sculpture, look at nature, look at art in any form. I think, you know, that's how to develop the eye. Technique and equipment are, you know, a totally, I mean, not totally, but a very separate pathway.
I think all of us would say it's not about the technology or equipment. Orasa, if you'd like to go, please go.
To me, all three. First of all, you have to have the eye to see that whatever light you put it in, that stone is not working. And it also helps to have decent camera, because if you use a really cheap one, your pictures doesn't do well. You have a little bit of decent camera. And second, software. As we know, you can't remove the glue, the hot glue gun, or the wax, the beeswax under that piece of carving without Photoshop. And a lot of old picture I've been using for the book, they have that icky blob stuff in there. The picture looks good, but we have to remove those. And of course, the technology and the software also help when you photograph tanzanite. It come out different than the original tanzanite, or color change, or color shift. You know, even opals, you have to cut out all those reflection from around you to put on the background. Otherwise, the color won't stand out. You know, so definitely need software too. And the better, I remember the first Photoshop came out 20, 30 years ago, and I took classes, community college, to learn how to use it. So when I came home every single night from my Photoshop class, I walk into the house like 10 p.m. and Robert said, "Teach me." They were like, it was like, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. So to me, if you know Photoshop, you're already quarter of the way to become a gem photographer. What else you can do? How to get good with Photoshop.
Jeff?
I think the eye is most important. Oh, you're good. Because without the eye, then you don't know what you're trying to capture to begin with. If you don't have the eye, you don't know whether to diffuse or use hard light, to use reflected light or not. And then you're going to have weird blown out facets when you don't need them, or when you shouldn't have them because you're trying to get an image of color, or you're trying to pull out some personality of the gemstone. So like with the eye, you know what to capture. The equipment comes, I think, secondary. But with that being said, I use a top of the line camera. I shoot 42 megapixels. I also use Photoshop because, I mean, like, it is a tool that we need to use to do the best job that we can. It's like, and when we're doing it, it's like, I make money doing this. It's like, it matters if I'm doing a good job or not. So it's like, for me, if I'm going to put my best foot forward, I need to use all available tools. Photoshop, I think, is necessary for anybody. But when I look at like what got me into photography of photographing gems and jewelry was for Robert Weldon's original photos. Like, to me, he's the pioneer, and I think he did a lot of that back in the day without Photoshop. I mean, I think he did it still with film, and he was pioneering it, which means it can be done without Photoshop, and it can be done without a $4,000 camera. And if you know what you're trying to get, and you know the eye, you can do this with, I mean, just a very inexpensive $500 Canon camera, where it's like, very inexpensive, being kind of, I don't know the word I'm getting at there, but it was like expensive and inexpensive are different for everybody, so it's relative. That's what I was looking for. But it's like with a $500 camera and with Photoshop, I can do the same job as what I do now. The resolution won't be the same because of my understanding for light, and I have the eye for, all right, do I want this facet to be blown out, or do I want it to actually blend in and be body color?
Thank you. That's a good insight. I have a lot of questions, and we have just about 25 minutes. So I'm going to try to ask questions as fast as possible. So if you could give brief answers to those, that would be a lot helpful so we can reach out to everybody. I think this is a very important question, again, coming from Robert Weldon, and that, anyway, I'm not going to put my input there, but I'm going to ask. What happens when a client says that gem needs to be more red or more blue or more green, and yet when you look at the stone, it does not have that saturation? How should this be handled? I love that, Orasa and Jeff.
Don't look at me, don't look at me.
Yeah. So for me, I will pick up the phone and talk to my client and say, let's talk about this problem. But most of the time, we go halfway. And then I have to know too that if that client trying to sell something that's not what it is, and I just say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not your photographer. Many times, because I refuse to put my name to something that it's not going to work. One of my, for some people, they find excitement buying new shoe, new handbag, whatever for. But for me, if my client saw all the images, all the pieces that I photographed and sold them all, and I send them an email, say, Orasa, I sold all the pieces. That's like heaven for me, just like, yes. For example, one project that I did the sunstone, and I got tagged, say, we sold 95% of all the stone. Thank you for your photography. To me, it made my money. I'm so happy. So that's why I want the client to be able to get the picture and win the picture and the stone side by side. Maybe a little different, especially the screen different, but it's close as possible. Otherwise, you don't do the job. Your job is not worth it. That's my answer.
Jeff, you were smiling.
Like, I would say, oh yeah, because I've got that quite a bit. There's a point to, like, I think our job is to represent something as accurately as possible. With that being said, there's a lot of relative basis when it comes to how our media is presented. Every screen does color slightly different. If you print this, let's say inks don't represent Savorite garnet or a really hot pink magenta. It could be a sapphire, it could be a garnet. Like, those pigments don't exist. So I said there is some relative when we're trying to represent products well, and sometimes we have to shift things after we, like, if I take something and I put it into CYMK, it's the death of all color. But but when you transfer color profiles, there's some colors that just don't exist in that color profile, and your color changes. And even within some print media, like, those pigments don't exist. And so that's something that, and it's a weird way to take the question, but in that we just try to do our best. When it comes to a client, they're like, oh, I want this to be a red ruby when it's clearly pink. Then that is a question of, are you representing your product correctly? And that's something that is between the photographer and the business owner. And I think it's very important to accurately represent the product.
So it's down.
That actually is a very political answer.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying that it's down to integrity with what you're representing, basically. And that's the integrity of your work as much as their integrity of their product.
Yes.
Yes.
Danny, do you have anything to say to this?
No, they said it. That was great.
All right. I have a next question. Actually, the same person asked two questions, but they can be combined. Diego Sanchez is asking, what types of surfaces do you photograph on, and what are your favorite light modifiers? So I guess it's during the process, the surface and the light together. Again, let's keep it as brief as possible. Anybody start?
My favorite background's a mirror. I either use glass that I spray paint the backside black so it doesn't have double reflections, or I use a mirror. My favorite background, and it's like, of course, I'll use whatever. And then my favorite light modifier is I buy Transilum plastic, and it comes in 3 different thicknesses, and I design my light modifiers. So it could be a cone or it could be something different, but I like building it with Transilum plastic. Here's my brief answer.
Thank you.
Good answer.
Danny?
I don't think that applies to me, but I will say that Diego took I believe this is the Diego Sanchez who took the picture of the diamond, and what a photograph. Just between you and me, Diego, if you're the Diego I think you are, great photo.
Okay. Orasa, do you have favorites?
To me, every project is whatever client wants, so I kind of stuck to too many of my favorite. Otherwise, they wouldn't like me anymore. And I like clean glass. I like non-glare. Sometimes I just use very thin reflective paper, so I get really cool in shadow. But it's anything can be done as long as get creative.
Okay, thank you. Now, the next one is from Pamela Bernstein, and she's asking for the retailer, what do you recommend? For example, Lightbox. I guess that's more of a daily practical work for the retailers. Do you have a particular recommendation for that?
I don't use Lightbox, so I don't know. But GIA offer a class that teaching how to use Lightbox. So that's one. I think Rover is teaching it. Yeah, and I don't use Lightbox. I have my own setup that I have more control over it. Therefore, I can't give too many people what to do with the Lightbox.
Okay. Any of you, Jeff, Danny, any advice?
For a retailer, light boxes are a quick way to take an acceptable photo. With that being said, I also hate them. Like, I will not use one. They will not do what I need them to do, nor will they have enough light output for me to have an efficient workflow. But that's what we're talking about is 2 different things. So it's like a light box is acceptable if you're taking a picture with your cell phone and you're putting it on. And there's a lot of people that do that really well. The Gem light box is a great product for most people, but I will never use one.
Yeah, I think the spirit of that question, I've been in that situation in a storefront, and what's the box that came out? It started popularity ramping up like right before COVID. It was the one that had a rotational stage. It had an app as well. It's an all-in-one.
Right. Terry just posted the link.
Oh yeah.
It's the pickup media light box right there.
It's like you do. The spirit of the question is like, how can I output a ton of my inventory, and with a really simple solution that I don't have to be an expert photographer, right, to understand. I imagine it's one of those things. It's just that they don't always, it's like they're gonna do rings really well, but they're not gonna shoot your necklaces all that great. They have pendant attachments, and I've seen them all, but there's not really one great solution, unfortunately, for a broad inventory range.
Thank you. Before I move on to the next question, Kate, we are asked about our panelists' email addresses to reach at them. Would you mind putting them on the chat box, please? Thank you. Okay, so next question is from one of the well-known inclusionists, Nathan Rampro is here, and he's asking, what is your favorite photo you have taken?
I'll start, Nathan. Oh, Nathan. I think that I have so many. I love them all, my babies. But there's a photo I took that looks like a mountain range in space, and it's just of a channel in quartz. But it really is really evocative. And when I remember taking that picture, and when it developed, quote unquote, like in Lightroom, and after the stack, it wasn't a deep stack, but after the stack was rendered and it just popped onto the screen rendered, I was very emotional. And that was an not early, but a photo that early on pointed to the potential of the thing I was the thing I was reaching for, which was an evocative photo of a place. And it's a really special photo to me, and might be my favorite.
How about you, Orasa?
My favorite photos, I have many favorites, but I remember when I was photographing for GIA Museum exhibit, they have this Tony the Cat, which is 2014. I had to photograph a lot of jewelry, big pieces with background. And I think I have it in my Instagram too. There's a necklace made of malachite and some other gems that the name of the necklace called Pawn Scum. And I was like, Pawn Scum? How can you have a necklace named Pawn Scum? But anyway, I have to figure out that every one of them need to be having object next to it or background, because that's the theme. So I put this necklace on top of it. But this is at GIA, so I have to carry my own stuff to GIA. I have this cooking tray filled with black rock, spray a lot of water on it. I think put more water in it. Put the necklace on top, spray water on it, and said, "There you go. I got Pawn Scum." And then shoot it from the top down. I thought, I got it. Took me 20 minutes or maybe less. So and then GIA used it for one of their big posters and then social media for the exhibition. And I thought myself, there you go. So whenever I type in Pawn Scum or Orasa Weldon, boom, come up with, there you go, my favorite. So that's my Pawn Scum. That's my favorite picture.
Jeff?
I'm gonna have to look that up now. I think my favorite photos are gemstone inclusion photos, something that I want to hang on the wall, right? Or something that I've learned something from. I mean, I have a picture, my screensaver on my iPhone is a blue zircon that just came alive in the photograph. And it retaught me how to do gemstones. And I learned I do lighting completely differently because of that one gem. To me, that it's special to me because I learned something that completely changed the way that I photograph, which it might be something that I would actually, I actually have one I hang on the wall, and it's a Brian Drummond gem carving that he's done. And the guy is BD Mastermind on Instagram. He does the most amazing gemstones. And it's an Oregon sunstone that it still blows my mind. It's like, I think, it's not on this water bottle. I make stickers of the ones that actually are meaningful, and then I just put them on my water bottle.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Next one. Brianna Hodge is asking a question to Danny. What is the best way to set up your camera and microscope to start experimenting with photomicrography as a beginner?
Good question. That's predicated on a lot of things, right? That means you have a microscope and you have a camera. But as a beginner, honestly, as a beginner, if you have access to a microscope, it's unlikely you have access to a microscope that has a trinocular port, right? A third port for the camera. I'm going to start there. So honestly, put your mobile phone up to the ocular, right? And try to take an informative photograph, a photograph that if you showed it to somebody else who doesn't know what they're looking at, it's in focus, it's well lit, and with minimal explanation, someone would go, "Oh, wow, yeah." If you have a microscope that has a third light output, then you're a lot of the way there already, and maybe you don't need an answer. But there isn't a best. As a beginner, there isn't a best. There is only what you can get your hands on. And I think to maybe an end run to this question is actually splurge on lighting. With photomicrography in particular, get more light than you need, because I think the one thing that people find in the beginning that is that they have to either use their exposures are too long, or they're in Lightroom working on the image way too much. But if you start with more light than you need, then at the very least you will not be overworking the photo, or that frustration is minimized.
Okay, thank you. The next question is coming from Denise Ross, and the question is, anyone interested in applying artificial intelligence?
I was playing around with it the other day, and I did not have very good success, although it's super cool and I'm into it, but not for my work. I'm into it as, for making other kind of fun things, but for my work, like, the fun is the exploration of the stone itself. It's not the photo at the end. The photo is a byproduct of my exploration, and so, for this question in particular, I like artificial intelligence to do other stuff and maybe make other great photos. But for me, the photo is far less relevant than the experience I'm having in the microscope.
Any thoughts?
If I could have AI run a script that would make editing quicker, that would be something that could be interesting. However, what I've noticed and the conversations that I've had with people is it's unreliable. And when you have a picture of a multitude of different shiny things that reflect light, it's like, you have to do that. That's the only way that I can think about applying that question, is if AI could run a script to make more efficient editing. Other than that, it's like, I like doing everything myself. It's the journey, and it's the fun of capturing the angles, and it's looking at the piece and trying to capture the personality of it.
Thank you. Orasa, any thoughts on that?
I think we still need to be in control of things. AI still has a long way to go.
Okay. All right. Our next question is from Maya Davy, and the question is, how different is the final result after using Photoshop compared to how you see?
To me, the difference between when my final product, let's say I photograph this stone and let's say photograph 15 of them, different angle, different lighting, just, I put them all from Lightroom to Photoshop, open it all up, line it up, and fix it. And by the time I'm done with Photoshop, which is mostly took out the dust. Sometimes the dust. I have a dog. Dust and dog, it's the same room. And then sometimes I have a reflector so close to the stone to get that certain area light up. I have to remove that in Photoshop. But at the end of the piece itself, beginning and the end, not much different, because I like to have most of my time with the camera and the light than my time with Photoshop. So my time for, let's say I spend 100% of my time with this stone, 80% is photograph, 20% dusting, removing, the wax or the glue or the reflector that is too close, cropping to make sure I'm turning to a certain format that the client wants. And sometimes I have to remove the background because there will be one white, that kind of thing. So not much.
How about you guys, Jeff, Denny? Do you think there's a difference after Photoshop? Should be.
Jeff?
Okay, for me, I actually will stack several photos. I focus stack, and because of that alone, it changes the piece, because it's like I deal with maybe 2 millimeters of sharp focus at a time. It could be a little bit long, it could be a little bit deeper than that, but for that alone, it changes it. And then I try to photograph on a neutral gray background, and I do that for the color of the gemstone. And then my end product is normally put on a white background. And when you put things on a white background, it changes the nature of the photo. So cutting out the background and photo stacking the piece, and to me, I feel like it changes it, but it changes it enough, but it's still representative of what it is. It's not like I'm changing the color of the gemstone or the piece itself.
I will say that photo stacking is a big component to my workflow and image output. So I know the question wasn't about photo stacking, but the software that I use to stack, I mean, it's a matter of 30 micron depth of field and like a millimeter or 2 millimeters rendered at the end. So yeah, the photo definitely looks different with that bit of software in between. And also, as far as Photoshop and Lightroom, I try my best to represent the image as I see it through the oculars. So, if I find that I am spending, and to Orasa's point, if I'm spending time, like, of course we have different, I'm not removing dust or, changing, taking the background out. But if I find that I'm spending too much time in Lightroom or Photoshop, I ditch it. I'm not interested in overworking a photo to get it to work. We have the three of us have different goals, but my goal is to compose in frame, take the shot or take the stack as it were, and do minimal processing in Lightroom. And there is, sometimes I'm taking out pixels or something in Photoshop, but there's very little Photoshop for me. It's mostly Lightroom, and that's it.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our time, so I will ask one more question. I think this is important, and the remaining questions I will basically share with the panelists, and if they can get back to you, or you would like to reach out to our panelists with the question, because we just published their email addresses, you're more than welcome to. The last question is from Krunal Patel, and the question is, it's actually two ties. How easy or difficult to build a career in gem photography today? I mean to ask, if a hobbyist wants to enter this field, is it possible to make a career?
I'll start, even though it's really not necessarily for me. But it's something I wanted to say earlier. As we touched on a little, networking is so important, and you know, getting your images in people's hands, getting in front of people, shaking their hands, learning what their product is, super important. And nothing's guaranteed, but certainly the more aware people are of you, the better it is for you and your potential path.
I agree with that also. I mean, without a network of people, I wouldn't have a career. I was once told when I was first getting into photography, like, there's plenty of room at the table if you're hungry. If you are willing to put in the hours, if you're willing to put in the work, if you are willing to not only create good photography, then there's room for you. And this industry can have more photographers. You think of, there once upon a time it was a $60 billion a year industry, and I think it's a lot larger now. I just don't look at the numbers because I don't care. Because of that, there's room for you at the table if you're willing to work for it. And that means doing the networking events, going to Tucson, meeting people, do good work, treat people well, because people don't work with people that you don't like. And even like, as I'm saying that, that's what I'm doing, because I still feel like my photography career is in its infancy. Like, I've only been doing this as a business for 3 years. It started with COVID. Otherwise, I would have been doing something different in this industry.
To me, you have to remember that everything's had to start somewhere, and don't give up when things get difficult, because sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes you have a good day. And if you really, really want it bad enough, you get it. And there's so many people out there willing to share their skill. I mean, may not be able to keep all the secret away, but that skill. And then you need to break away as well. Like I said, you cannot try to be doing what everybody else doing, because then mean you can't stand out. If you have something to shoot a little bit, couple steps further than all the other photographer, then you have a little extra client that seek out what your services. So for example, I have most of my work Monday to Friday plus weekend, books for client who's in this jewelry industry. And because I'm a photographer as well, therefore I also sometimes photographed it for the book. And then I have gemstone photographer, gemstone client that like certain look, which is they know that I can give them. And so, and then some client that mostly carving, that they want me to photograph, and then they like what I do, because I try to get the inclusion to come out, and then the surface of the carving is still beautifully lit. Those are my clients. And then I don't get too many jewelry clients, because I don't think they like my jewelry very much. But I'm also, because I don't know how to go further, like the touch up, making the metal look shiny, because when I see it, it's not shiny, So so that's it. I think don't give up, because the first 2 years or 3 years, it's very difficult, especially when you're all by yourself and you woke up and you said, what am I going to do to make this thing look good? Nobody going to be able to explain it to me. So that's what I have.
Yeah, don't give up. Ask for help. Ask for help.
Yeah.
Passion, knowledge, and perseverance, I guess, are the answers, right?
Yeah.
Well, I am so happy. Thank you so very much sharing your knowledge, your time, your thoughts with us, your talent with us. And And thank you for joining us today, to all attendees and asking questions, and please be in touch. And this was our last panel of the year. We came to an end. Hopefully we'll have more next year, and hope to see you all again. I'd like to leave it to Terry, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, panelists. That was really great. Enjoyed it immensely, and I know all of our attendees did as well. And thank you, everyone, all of you gemologists and gemologist photographers, for sharing your time with us this morning. We do hope that you will consider becoming members of the Accredited Gemologist Association. It's a great group of gemologists from around the world, and everyone is very eager to share their knowledge and their experience. You'll get a lot out of it, and it's incredibly inexpensive, let's put it that way. I'd also like to thank Kate for keeping us all up to date on what's happening on social media. She takes care of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our email announcements, which have a lot of really super information, including our next big networking event, which is the Tucson Conference. So we hope to see you all on February 1st, 2023. And thanks again.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.